going to go ahead and get started. I always like to come back from a holiday weekend, especially one that I've actually done something with myself, and just prove that I had a better weekend than you. Hang on. Oh, now it's dark. There we go. So I always like to come back from a long weekend and just also show that anything that I assign to you guys, I'm willing to do myself as well. So one of the things that I did over the long weekend here was I took a little bit of the design elements and principles assignment that I gave to you guys, and I was like, let's see what I could do with this, right? So we went on a massive road trip over the weekend, and we had a lot of stops. I also like giving short little plugs about me throughout the semester. That way you can learn a little bit about me too. I'm a huge national park geek. One of my professors when I was in undergrad, he actually started up what is called the National Park Geeks. It's a whole community, but it's also a brand. So we went to several national parks over the holiday weekend. We started at the Grand Canyon. This is a location called Torwet.
I was there as well, actually.
Were you?
Yeah.
Very nice. So you took the 60-mile long dirt road all the way out?
No, I was actually in the South Rim.
South Rim, okay. So this is North Rim. Very, very long dirt road, very shaky, very rocky. Beautiful view, though. I like to say crying is only acceptable in two places, at funerals and the Grand Canyon. That's actually a quote from Ron Swanson, if you watch Parks and Rec. Beautiful location, but when you look at it, there are several elements at play here, right? You have color, you have line, you have value. There's light value that's happening here. There's shadow value that's happening here. There's the shape, and you can see all of that coming together. There's a line going straight up through the frame. There's a lot happening.
Form is well.
Yeah, form is in there as well. I mean, particularly within this like bulge of rock there, you can kind of see it. And a lot of these are somewhat implied, right? I think that I know that the assignment that I gave you guys over the weekend is a little bit much. It's a lot to go through and come up with that many iterations, but that's kind of the point. I'll show some more photos, but I think it's also a good opportunity to mention how, and I think I've scrolled through some of your guys' submissions. I haven't seen all of them yet, but I think it's a good opportunity to mention that sometimes, who's familiar with the sunk cost fallacy? Anyone? Okay. So basically, at some point in a project, you're going to get to a situation where you're like, man, do I keep going forward and doing it wrong, or do I dump it and start over? And oftentimes, a lot of people's answers are going to be, well, I'm just going to keep investing into it and keep going into it until eventually you spend so much money or time or effort or whatever trying to get that one little thing done. Versus sometimes you may just start it over and realize, oh, I can do this so much faster the second, right? So you guys just got through your first version of sunk cost fallacy. And you probably all spent a bunch of time going through it and just iterating and iterating and iterating. At some point, you probably just blurred the lines between, I don't even know what these elements and principles are anymore. That's the whole point, right? It's supposed to be so iterative that if you had to do it a second time, you'd be like, got it. Okay? So, it's a little bit of an unconventional learning method. It's learning through frustration, right? But do know that it is intentional. Texture, this seems like a great opportunity for texture. Lots of dirt roads, so felt like a good opportunity to take a picture of that. Let's go to Bryce Canyon. This is a really popular trail, probably seen it on Instagram or TikTok. But
Bryce Canyon?
Bryce Canyon, yep. And you go down one way and you have Wall Street, and on the other side you have Fairyland. So this is Fairyland.
So, question.
Yeah.
How are you taking this picture? We're using a drone.
No, I am standing holding my camera, but it is steep as hell. So I can see why you might think it looks like it's taken with a drone. It is, I think you gain 500 feet of elevation in like an eighth of a mile. It's pretty ridiculously steep. There's, in one of these photos, there's someone getting rescued because it's so steep. I don't think it's this one, but I have one.
How was the weather down there during this?
Warm, but not miserable. We'll get to some of the miserable hikes. Bryce Canyon. This is another area called Kodachrome Basin, but it felt like a really good spot to do line, right? Something that's not a straight line. This is what you would call a leading line, so it's leading you from the bottom to the top towards the focal point there. This one's not really anything, elements and principles, it's just a fun photo. This is a good one showing value, right? You can sort of see the value in the different shapes of the hills. You have different lighting value that ends up here, and then you have a whole nother value and shape up in the sky.
The landscape's so different from Grand Canyon to
Yes.
Canyon. It just changes so
It's that
drastically.
whole area. This is called Grand Staircase Escalante. You can kind of imagine why it's called that.
The image you showed with the house, wasn't that a definition for space?
Yeah, you could definitely. I would. Actually, this is a good comment. One thing that I did notice in a lot of your guys' photos is a lot of you guys thinking of space somewhat architecturally, like space as an area, as opposed to space as in distance. I'll show you what I would call a slightly better example of space, because to me, this reads as spatial area and not necessarily spatial spacing, right? But I mean, there's a lot of subjective interpretation here. You guys might see it one way, I might see it slightly different.
Would you say spacing is here as well in present?
I would say no.
No? Okay.
No. Here, this one's a good one showing color, right? You've got good contrast, the red and the green.
What about the space on the ground though, like the pathway?
Yeah.
You're getting there.
Yeah,
I'll show you a better one. This one was just for fun. This was these are some buttes in Capitol Reef National Park, and those are if you don't know anything about Capitol Reef, it's a giant rip in the earth, basically. Not like the Grand Canyon. The canyon was carved. Capitol Reef was pulled, and you're left with these buttes and mountain ranges that are quite interesting. Here's a good one showing form, for sure. You can even get a little bit of texture in there, but not quite a good example. Petroglyphs, just because they're fun.
In the
Yeah.
last picture, could it be like continuity because of those, like the,
Yep.
That's
Repetition. So now you're getting into the principles. Yeah, you get a little bit of repetition and continuity.
That's not sand, right? That's rock, right?
It's a little of both. It's soft sand that then gets rained on and then hardens like mud.
Because I'm seeing those grooves over there. I'm
Yep.
trying to figure out if it's like sand.
Yeah. So I mean, they are hardened for sure, but you could dig in and it's not hard like a rock. Petroglyphs because they're fun. Good use of line, right? Even you've got slight contrast. It's not super contrasty. It's kind of low contrast, but you get contrast in there. This is the center of Capitol Reef National Park. Super pretty. That's Capitol Peak up there, and then just a nice barn. This is a shit photo. But really shows some nice forms in there. You also have a little bit of line happening in between there. It's really hard to see, but it was prettier in person.
Edited to make it much nicer.
Oh, absolutely. I just haven't had time yet. This is a nice one for color, value,
What is
shade.
it?
This is called House on Fire, aptly named. It's a native dwelling. A butte for form, because why not? More buttes. This is Monument Valley. This is a beautiful one for like form, for line, line shape, space, form, color, value, texture. There's texture in there, right? More of that. You also have good composition in there. My dog, because why not? Here's a good one for spacing, right? You can sort of see the space between these. And if you want an even better example, it's getting tighter, right? Even tighter. So some really good examples of space there. Also, Parker Dam, because why not? You could look at this as space as well, right? And then last night's sunset, because what? It was pretty magical. All right, that's enough show and tell. How's everyone feeling about the work they did this weekend? Sorry, it's kind of great. There,
What's your
that's,
dog's name?
her name's Sahara. Thank you for asking, just like the desert. Okay, I'm gonna make today pretty quick because I want to get you guys out of here. Also, I haven't eaten lunch, so we're gonna find some time in there somewhere. But today's lecture is gonna be really, really easy. What I really want to frame up for you guys is, by the way, really quick, Professor Storm online, setup's good? We're doing okay?
Yes, everything looks good.
Awesome, cool. We were just getting through a little show and tell, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Cool. So today's lecture is going to be really, really simple. I just want to frame up for you guys what tool for what job. Okay. And what I mean by that is in the design industry, we use a lot of different tools. There's no slides for this one today. Like I said, it's going to be really down and dirty. I want to make sure that, one, you guys know what you're doing for your lab, which is literally just downloading all the Adobe apps and Figma. You might even, if you want to get ahead and plan on taking GIT 450, 550, you might even want to download Notion, right? But really the ones that I'm looking for is that you've downloaded some specific Adobe apps, so I'll go over that in class, and that you've downloaded Figma for sure. We're not gonna get to Figma until Module 5, maybe, and you can do something in Module 6 with Figma if you want, but I have to keep you guys interested somehow, right? So the tools that you will want to download, you'll want to make sure that you download Adobe Illustrator. You'll want to make sure that you download Adobe InDesign, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Lightroom. What was that?
The last one that you just mentioned.
Lightroom.
That one?
Lightroom.
Not classic.
Room full of light, Lightroom.
Yeah. It's a classic or the modern version?
Please do Adobe Lightroom Classic. That has a lot more, that's a great question. Thank you for mentioning that. Adobe Lightroom Classic has a lot more tools, such as like metadata that we want to work with. I think Classic or the newer version has metadata. It's just trickier to work with. And the Classic just has a lot more adjustments and things that we can use to manipulate. So yes, thank you for asking.
So that one, how do you install it? That's not a
Good question. I will show you guys that. Let me get through the list of what you're doing here, and then we'll cover that. Let's see. I did Illustrator, I did Lightroom, I did Photoshop, I did InDesign. That should be most of your Adobe softwares that you need. Optionally, Adobe Bridge can be helpful for things like metadata, but you really don't need it. In fact, Bridge is, if you ask me, on its way out the door. There's other better tools for things like that. Trying to go through my list here in my head. I think that's all of it for Adobe. If you plan on doing any video work or animation work during your time here in GIT, you're welcome to just take the opportunity and download things like Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects. We won't cover those in this class though, just because those are a class of their own. That's a lot to cover. All right. Beyond that, again, download Figma. Really quickly, everyone stop typing and look at me. Download Figma as an application, but when you guys go to register for the account, make sure that you set up a student account. Okay, that is critical. If you don't do that, you don't get all the features that you'll need in the class. Okay, because if you just get a free account, you're going to get basic stuff. If you get the education account, you get the pro plan for free. Okay, and 9 times out of 10, Figma doesn't check their subscriptions for quite a while, and then you get to keep it after you're done with your education. They'll eventually get you, but it usually takes a year. Yes.
Use our like EDU email for that.
Yes, please use your ASU EDU email. If you guys have concerns, this is a good opportunity for me to share my screen. Hang on a sec.
Do we have that email after graduation? and
Yes,
then-
you retain access to your EDU email. So yeah,
Okay, great.
unless for whatever reason you, I don't even think this is a valid scenario, but if you like really do something bad, they might take it away. But just stay out of trouble and you should be in good shape. All right, give me a sec. I'm going to show you guys because in the syllabus, I have it all spelled out for you. I just have to pull up the right class. One sec. I have too many tabs open. Okay, here we go. Let me share my screen. This lecture is always a little bit more fun to give just because it's a little bit looser. And that's still the wrong class. Hang on a sec. Dashboard. Okay, you guys are 540. There you are. All right, now we're cooking with gas. So, in the syllabus in Canvas, which is right here. By the way, if anyone's working in Canvas and they're not able to see the sidebar, you just have to hit this little hamburger stack on the left-hand side there, and that'll populate for you. So down here in the syllabus, you have to scroll down a little ways. Apologies for the people online. For Adobe, you need to request access for it. Okay, they're usually fairly quick. Sometimes they can be a little slow, especially fall semester because there's usually a lot more enrollments. So don't dilly-dally on this. Okay, you can click on that, and then once the tab loads, and once Professor Reneker can figure out why it's there, we go. Everything's running a little bit slow today. I do apologize. You have to scroll down here to the students section and hit the student request. That's why it's not working. Okay, there. Now online folks can see. So I'm sorry, let me start that from the top. In the syllabus, oh, geez, Zoom is always in my way. Here we go. Okay, so in the syllabus, you have the Adobe CC section right here. When you click on that, that'll take you to this page. And you have to scroll down a little bit to get to the student section so that you can hit the student request. And then you have to, I've already done it, so I apologize, I can't show you what the request looks like, but you'll fill this out using your ASU email. If you don't use your ASU email, they will not give it to you. Okay? Make sure that you do that because that'll take a little bit of time for them to approve. They're usually pretty good at getting it done within 24 hours. So I would say do that now. Once you've done that, there's another section in here that is Figma. Boink. This one here is the education section. You have to get verified. Okay, so once again, make sure to use, again, I'm already verified, so I'm not going to be able to show you, but make sure to use your ASU email address. If you don't use that, they won't give it to you. Sometimes they may even ask for a copy of your syllabus, in which case you can come right back over here. You can hit Command or Control P on your keyboard, and you can just hit up in the top right, save as PDF, and then save it at the bottom. If you're on a PC, your interaction there might be a little bit different, but I trust you'll be able to figure that out. Any questions on that so far? We're good? Okay. There was a question over here that I said that I would come back to, and I have now forgotten. Did I cover it?
Adobe
Basic. Oh, how to download them. So you'll start by going to ASU's thing and getting it approved. And then you'll need to log in to adobe.com. You'll download the Creative Cloud suite. So it's all pretty intuitive. Right here, you'll just download Creative Cloud Pro and it'll install a whole suite on your computer. But then from there, you have to go and download each individual app. I can show you what it looks like on a Mac. I can't show you what it looks like on a PC, so I apologize.
So that Lightroom that you see there, that's the one I'm installing?
So you're gonna install this one right here. The Creative Cloud Pro.
Within that, you're talking about Lightroom specifically?
I'm sorry,
You're talking about Lightroom specifically.
Lightroom specifically. So within Adobe, hang on a sec. Oh, is it not gonna show for you guys? No. Okay, so yes, you can do it from here. Down here you have Lightroom. And I think this one is Lightroom Classic. That's the one you want. Okay. If you're using, so I'm not able to show it because Zoom blocks it out for a silly reason. There's going to be two options. You'll have Adobe Classic, and then let me see what they call it. Or, I'm sorry, Lightroom Classic, and then they have. You want Photoshop, so you'll need Lightroom and Photoshop. Those are two different apps.
Oh, no, it comes as a separate element, okay.
Yep. So there's one that's just called Lightroom, and then there's one that's called Lightroom Classic. You want Lightroom Classic.
Could it be in the student and teachers tab?
So this is a little different than what you're actually going to see.
If you open it on Adobe CC, once you open Lightroom, at the bottom it shows also similar. Okay, so if you go into Lightroom and then it just comes on the side here, Lightroom Classic is the option.
Let me see if I can do something with the screen share really quick.
Get rid of this, like.
Got it,
two different face.
So it's just another.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a sec so that I can.
I cannot stand it. So it's forward to my personal email. Like, I want to be able to just send email
think
from
this
this
might-
address, like, can you do that?
There we go. Okay, so this is what you guys will see once you've downloaded the Creative Cloud section. I already have a bunch of apps installed because if I uninstalled and reinstalled this for every semester, I would lose my damn mind. So that said, down here, see this one that says just Lightroom?
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want to scroll down a little further and you'll get Lightroom Classic. That's the one you want. I'll be very transparent. Adobe reorders this for every person. That's kind of annoying. So if you can't find it, just keep scrolling. Okay? Or scroll up.
If you open Lightroom, it comes up inside it as well.
Correct.
It
Yep.
comes up as another software, shows
Yep.
Photoshop and Lightroom Classic. So.
Once you've downloaded everything, it's sort of up to you to do with it what you need to do. Okay? We'll be using it. Particularly, we're going to start with Illustrator in this class. And then we're going to move on to a little bit of Lightroom. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with Lightroom, but it can get a little quirky. Then we'll move into Photoshop. Then we'll move into InDesign. Then we'll move into Figma. Okay. I have a
Are we
question.
mainly using Lightroom for color grading photos?
More than just color grading, we are actually, so this jumps the gun a little bit, but there's a difference in the style of photos that you can have. You can have what is called raw photography, which retains all of the photographic data outside of, I shouldn't say outside of the histogram. A histogram is basically a range of light that is being captured within a photo. What happens in a raw file is it retains the entire histogram versus a JPEG, which everyone's probably familiar with, JPEG or JPG. That takes just the important parts of that data and says, great, that's all you get. So what a raw photo does is it allows you to edit and manipulate the lighting and everything a little bit better.
Yeah.
It's called non-destructive editing. Versus a JPEG, you wouldn't be able to do. So we'll go into that in module 3, along with Photoshop. So Photoshop and Lightroom we're going to cover together. Illustrator is going to be a whole module, and that's going to be module 2. And then module 4 will be, sorry, I'm kind of going out of order here. Module 4 is going to be InDesign. And then module 5 will be Figma, and then module 6 will be your guys' final passion project where you have to take 2 of those apps, softwares, and push them together. Make them work together. That's where the cross-media design part comes in. Okay? Any questions on that before I kind of get into some smaller details? Yeah.
Asking for
some additional document for verification?
Probably my syllabus. So the question for online is that when you go into Figma and you try to register for it, it's going to ask you for some additional documentation. It might be asking for one of two things usually. One of them is probably a syllabus, and if you're not getting that, it may be asking for your course schedule. So in which case, if it's asking for your course schedule, let me stop sharing and reshare. By the way, this is what Lightroom Classic looks like, just so you're aware. If it's asking for your course schedule, you can go to myasu.edu. This is my student schedule, so you can just go right here, and you can print this out, again, Command P, save as PDF, and if that's all it's asking for, you can just do that. So it might be one of both of those. It might be, the most common one I've seen is it asks for the syllabus, but every once in a while it may ask for your syllabus and the schedule, or just the schedule. Okay. Any other questions? Awesome. So I want to make sure that I'm prefacing this whole lecture today is a little bit of prefacing, and I want to make sure that you guys know what each tool is really used for, because there's a lot of misuse in the industry. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a card or a brochure designed in Photoshop. It drives me nuts. You're literally making your life harder. We are going to go through and we're going to touch on each of these applications in this class. I'm literally going to show you how to use the thing. If there's a lab in here, we are going to, so lectures are going to start looking a little bit different for the next two modules, where you're literally going to come in class and I'm going to show you how to do the lab. It's monkey see, monkey do. That's it. So when we come in on Tuesday, I'm literally going to show you guys how to trace the Apple logo. It sounds simple, but I'm going to show you guys a few tricks that's going to make it a little bit easier. Again, some of this might be a refresher for some of you. Other areas, it might be something new. Okay. Tools for the job. Illustrator. It's kind of in the name. Illustrator is used primarily for illustration. There are other use cases. For example, whenever I finally get it redesigned and up and running, we'll have a packaging design class at ASU, and that's one of my big backgrounds. So we use Illustrator in packaging design for a lot of things. We use it to create the die lines so that we understand where the paper, the cardboard, or whatever material we're working with gets cut. Right? We also use Illustrator to lay out the artwork. So you can combine things like photos and text and illustrations and some pretty complex things within Illustrator. You'll often hear a delineation that Illustrator is used for illustration and InDesign is used for printing. I don't think that's necessarily true. You can develop a file for print within Illustrator. In fact, there's really no other way that I can think of doing that for packaging other than using Illustrator. It's a little bit of an edge case. There are also some things where I would say, if you're, and I'll talk about InDesign in a second here, but if you're using Illustrator instead of InDesign, it might be acceptable. For example, if you're designing a trifold brochure, probably don't need InDesign for doing that, but some purists would argue with me. I'll let them have their cake. So Illustrator, you're primarily making what is called vector shapes. There's a difference between image construction methods. There's vector and then there's raster. Okay? Something like a photograph, something that is made out of pixels, right? Individual pixels that if you zoomed in, you would just see a bunch of little squares. That is called raster-based imaging. Okay? On the other hand, vector-based imaging, where if you zoomed in, you could kind of zoom in infinitely and just see line work or solid shapes. That is called vector imaging. Okay? So Can anyone give me an example of a raster image? A regular photograph, yes. A regular photograph is built out of, in some cases, millions of pixels, right? The photos that I showed you earlier were taken on a Nikon Z8, which is around about a 45 megapixel camera. That's 45 million pixels that make up that one photo. Okay, so you have to zoom in pretty damn far in order to see that. There are cameras out there that, like a Phase 1 IQ 250, that literally makes up the image out of 250 million pixels, which is ridiculous. You're printing on the side of a building at that point. Okay. Versus a raster-based image. Yes, I'm sorry, thank you. A vector-based image, I just talked about raster. That is almost infinitely scalable. What I mean by that is if you take a photo of something, a standard photograph with pixels, there is a feature within Photoshop that is called resizing, and you can scale up a photo. But really all that's doing is it's saying, okay, look at this pixel, now add 4 pixels around it that's that same color. So you're not actually adding any extra size to that image, you're just adding noise, really. You're trying to create information where information doesn't exist. Versus a vector drawing where you are actually scaling up physical shapes. And again, I say almost infinitely, but that is really just a limitation of the artboard, which the last I checked was about 100 feet by 100 feet. So if you can think of something that's 100 feet tall you need to print on, let me know. By that point, sometimes you can even go into AutoCAD, which gets into ugly stuff that I don't want to talk about. Okay, I covered vector versus raster. We're going to start with vector because obviously we're starting with Illustrator, right? And I think it's important that we start there because how many people have already approached me and said, I don't feel like I'm good at drawing. I'm not good at drawing, right? And you don't need to. That's kind of the beauty of vector drawing is that, and I think this is again another one of those instances where design and art don't necessarily meet, is we can trace. And what no one else knows doesn't need to bother them. Obviously, we don't want to steal artwork, but we can use what is called the transfer technique, and I'll get into that in another lecture. But we'll go over that. And that's really what we're going to start with here. Once you've kind of learned the basics and understand what the tools are doing, in this class we're going to do a lot of tracing in Illustrator. That way you can learn those tools and those basics. But once you've learned those, then you can go off and be a little bit more creative and make your own icons and what have you. That said, most of you guys are UX students, so not every website or not every app needs custom bespoke icons. Sometimes you can go and pull a stock library, but you'll still need to use Illustrator to pull them out and then put them into Figma or Adobe XD, whatever tool you're using. Please don't use Adobe XD. We're gonna set that. Any questions on vector? Okay. Similarly, let's talk about Photoshop. What is Photoshop used for? I think I've already identified that Photoshop isn't exactly good at creating like brochures, right? Although and this is the thing, like you can do it, but should you? Probably not. And I think this is an important moment for me to impose a question on all of you, which is how do you make your money in this industry? Think about that for a sec. How do we make money in this industry? Anyone? Yeah.
Like by providing an end product. That's
Providing an end product, think small.
efficiency.
Efficiency. And what relates to efficiency? Time. You are selling nothing but your time. And if you can do something in less time, you can make more money, right? And then once you've perfected how quickly you can do something, the more money you can charge. So I'm at a point where, depending on the type of project and depending on the client, I can charge my clients anywhere from $250 an hour to $500 an hour. No problem, because they know that they can come to me and I'm going to get it done in the amount of time that they need it done. Just the faster you want it, the more expensive it gets. Right? Those are called rush fees. Take 540, or I'm sorry, 550. You want to learn about that. But that said, you guys make money in this industry based on the amount of time that you spend on something. If you are reveling in the perfectionistic details, I'm sorry, you're not going to make any money. You have to learn when well done is good enough. Okay? But we also have to learn how to make something pixel perfect. So we're going to do a little bit of both. Okay? Good, we talked about that. Photoshop. Photoshop is a really great app for doing what?
Brochures.
What was that?
Brochure.
No, we don't want to use Photoshop for a brochure.
Raster-based stuff.
Raster-based, it's kind of in the name though. Photoshop is good for doing what? Editing photos. Yeah, there we go. All right, sorry. That was maybe I was burying the lead a little bit. So let's use Photoshop for doing that, right? Let's use Photoshop for editing photos. There's a few edge cases. For example, if you wanted to make, I'm going to make some people mad. If you want to make a GIF, and that is what I'm sticking to. I don't care if you call it a GIF. Take it up with someone else. If you want to make a GIF, that is the combination of a bunch of photos to create a moving picture, right? You don't need to break out After Effects to do that, although you could. I find it a little easier in Photoshop. There's also a lot of what's called, I think that a lot of people, again, we're talking about speed here, right? A lot of people go into Photoshop and they just want to make, do the edits in little areas, right? That's great, and there's a time and a place for that, but there's also a time and a place for what's called batch editing, right? If everything that you're working with has a white background, how do we just go through and remove all the white backgrounds on all the images by pressing 1 or 2 buttons? That's the type of speed and efficiency that I like to work with. Okay, so we'll look at a little bit of that. You can also composite images in Photoshop. You can take one image and another image and put them together to make a whole new image, right? Talk about Photoshop, any questions on that? Cool. InDesign, I've touched on this a little bit already. I think some purists would say that if you're sending it to print, it should go through InDesign, but there are some edge cases. What InDesign is really designed to be, saying the word design a lot, is a publication tool. If you are designing something that is going to be published, typically bound or folded or something like that, InDesign is usually a good option. Okay. An example, an obvious example would be a book, right? Perhaps a less obvious example would be like one of those trifold brochures. Okay. Now, if it gets a little bit more advanced than something like a trifold or a quadfold, I would say then maybe go back to Illustrator, right? I'll bring one in tomorrow. Perhaps someone remind me, or maybe I'll write it down somewhere. I'm sorry, not tomorrow. I'll bring it in on Thursday. I have this like multi-fold that we designed for the studio that like comes out to 21 inches long, but it's only like 8 inches high. So you get multiple folds out of it. That one's one that you should probably stick to Illustrator for. But if it's simple, like pages that are facing and going together into a book, that's a really great place to do InDesign. Okay. Also, if you have a lot of slightly complex lettering to work with. So if you have a lot of body copy, which is like the main read of a page, InDesign is really good for that because you have a lot of text tools. All of that said, a lot of the tools that are in each of those applications are going to transcribe from one application to the next, right? Illustrator has really great text tools. I would argue Photoshop's are marginally worse, but they are there. And then InDesign, it's just all about the efficiency of using the right tool for each individual job. Yes, it takes a little bit of context switching in order to like get yourself familiar in that application. But when you use the right tool for the job, it's a good opportunity to talk about you not thinking about yourselves anymore, right? You have to now think about yourselves as working on a team. Who here is trying to get a job? That should probably be most of you. If you want to get a job, you have to stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the efficiency of the team, right? So if you build a design in Photoshop, but it was really supposed to be designed in Illustrator, and then someone else from the team goes and picks it up, they're going to be like, what the hell is this? Right? So that's where using the right tool for the job is really, really important. Figma, this one's probably going to be the most obvious for many of you, but I went through all the other stuff to get to this point, which is Figma is just InDesign, but for the web. In a way. That's kind of my half-hearted way to explain it. But really, when you think about it, Figma is just a publication tool for the web. It's lacking a little bit on the publication side of things, because although they're implementing the direct publish to web, it's not quite whole-baked yet. But what they do have is the ability to go in, lay things out, and get it ready to hand off to a developer to publish. Don't tell the developers, but I'm pretty sure we're all coming for their jobs, and it's going to be a lot easier. I think there's still going to be some complex implementations that are going to be required of them, but then, unfortunately, I think ChatGPT is going for that. Right? So I think you guys have a much more stable job because a robot, at least as of right now, isn't capable of empathy. So take that for what it's worth. Any questions? Cool. How's everyone feeling about the assignment? Glad we had a little bit of an extra day in there? Cool. I know it's a long one. Really, the purpose of that exercise is to get you guys comfortable with iteration, right? It's to get you guys to start thinking about how the elements and principles interplay. I talked a little bit about the sunk cost fallacy. In this class, do not be afraid to start over. We're going to cover a very wide range of topics in this class. I mentioned this on day one. I have 1 semester to teach you everything that an undergrad learns in their 4 years of study. And that's just to get you up to speed so you can be successful in grad school. Okay? So, again, I don't say that to scare you, but I do say that to, I want you guys to feel comfortable with failing. That is the big thing. I won't let you fail the class if you're comfortable with failing the assignment. Right? But what that means is it might take several iterations. It might mean you start over in some areas, and that's okay. So as we get into some of these softwares next week, this week, on Thursday, we're going to start with Illustrator. So as we get into those, try to center yourself around this idea that you are going to be learning potentially a new tool, and it's going to maybe be hard, but I really fundamentally encourage you all, bring questions. I am extremely proficient in Illustrator. I believe Professor Storm, actually I know Professor Storm is proficient. Oh, words are hard. I know that Professor Storm is proficient in Illustrator. I know we're both proficient in Photoshop, and I know we're both proficient in InDesign and Figma. So actually, you've got 2 professors here who know their shit. Okay? So that said, I'm going to do my absolute best to show you guys and explain every little thing that I'm doing. Okay? I'm going to do my best to tell you guys which keyboard commands I'm using as I go. If I miss one, or if you need a repeat of something, can everyone agree that this is a safe space to ask questions? Great. There's no excuse. If you don't understand something, or if you're like, I missed that keyboard command, or what button did you push to do that? please speak up. Even if you're online, use the Slack channel. Also, important note, help each other. You're all in grad school. This is an important part. You guys are the future leaders that every single employee, every student, what have you, wherever you go on to work, people are going to look up to you just because you have a master's or a PhD, whatever it is that you're going for. So get comfortable with teaching. That's important. Because if you can learn it to the point where you can teach it, and then ultimately field questions about it and have your mentality checked, then you've really learned. Okay? Any questions? Wonderful. Motivational speech over. Have a wonderful day. That's it. Online, we're good?
All good.
All right.
And I mentioned to the folks that are online, if they do have a question in the middle of the lecture, they should use chat so that I can try to answer that right away.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, if you're joining into some of the lectures online,
How did you sign?
really quickly, guys, quiet down for a sec just because they can't hear me if everyone's talking. Yes, if you are online, please feel free to ask questions. If you're joining the call through the Zoom link and you're watching the lectures live, use the chat. Professor Storm's in there. She'll answer your questions. If I can read it and answer it, I would totally do that, and everyone in person can hear it. And if you're not joining, then yeah, throw it in Slack and help each other. Good point. Anything else for online?
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.